Hello students, welcome to week 2 for COM 505. This week we are spending time focusing on the communicator within communication theories and seeing what implications the communicator has on society. When you look at our agenda, you can see we are reading chapter 3 of our text. We are watching a significant amount of videos, and that's because these videos really help highlight some of the theories you'll see presented by Littlejohn and Foss in the course text this week. Specifically, I will highlight some of the theories, only 2 of them in this lecture. The rest I want you to digest through the videos and you're reading on your own and to see how they really fit in with the coursework at this point. You will be required to complete a discussion board on Friday with the reply posts due no later than Sunday, as well as your critical review due no later than Sunday. Also, do keep in mind, for those of you that may have reached out to me over the weekend, I do take time to observe the Sabbath on Sunday and take some time to just really spend the weekend with my family. So with that, my emails and my communication to you is intermittent and usually only addressed on an immediate basis if there's an emergency or some type of thing that would require me to take away that time from my family. So please make sure if you have assignment related questions, you are asking them between Monday and Friday, so that way I can get back to you in a timely manner. So do not forget that that is our weekly agenda. We are focusing on 4 objectives this week. At the end of week 2, you should be able to discuss theories specifically on how they relate to the communicator, as well as exploring how we see ourselves within the communication process and how that is worked out in relation to those around us. So still focusing on our own internal communication process and how we as the communicator work out many different things to those around us. The third thing we will focus on is discussing how human interactions are influenced by communication contexts, as well as describing biopsychological as well as cognitive and information processing theories this week. This relates specifically to objectives 1.2 and 2.2 within the course text. This week we have our first critical review. You'll see that this particular assignment is repeated a couple of times throughout the term. The reason for this is as we are striving to become communication scholars, that's one of the pivotal points of graduate work, is becoming a scholar within your discipline. You really need to learn how to critically review other scholars' work. Peer review is a huge part of the academic process. When you actually conduct your own research, when you're postgraduate, doctoral degree, and you're conducting a study on your own and you submit it to be accepted into a journal, it's peer reviewed. When you submit a paper or a presentation for acceptance at a peer conference, it's peer reviewed. So critically reviewing others' work is vital and is actually paramount to the scholarly community in any discipline, but specifically in communication for our understanding. So it's really, really important that you develop a deeper understanding of scholarly studies as well as theories to stay current in the scholarship within your particular discipline. So we're going to review some of these pieces. You're going to find your own journal articles that you find valuable and work on that many different times this term. With that, our assignment for the first critical review, or actually for all of the critical reviews, you'll see this throughout the term that the assignment instructions do not change. The only thing that will change the scholarly piece that you are reviewing. What you're required to do is to pick any scholarly source or research journal article that you'd like. The best way to go about this is to go to the CBU online library. So access that through CBU Online. Go in there, and when you get to the one search, you can pick a particular database if you'd like. The EBSCO host is EBSCO host. Usually has the widest variety of academic journals. However, if you just go to the one search bar, which is actually the search tab that will come up when you go to the Annie Gabriel Library, and type in some topic that you'd like, look for the academic journals. So once say you search for children in media, and when that pops up, you'll see all the information the library has at CBU related to that topic. You'll look for one that says on the left-hand side, Academic Journal. You'll click that. You'll download the actual piece of scholarship, the journal article, which is usually about 15 to 20 pages in length, give or take on either side, and you'll read it and then write a review of it. I'm not looking for a review that you would see in the newspaper or online about a famous movie or anything like that. Rather, I'm looking for you to provide a critical evaluation. I want you to analyze the piece, and then in addition to that, I want you to critique it and tell us what you think of it. The best way to start thinking about research and what you'll be doing, especially towards the end of your academic career here at CBU and your capstone project, is to start looking at it. So this process will hopefully not become mundane by the end of the term, but hopefully become something that is interesting to you, because you get to pick a new piece of scholarship each time. It usually works best if you look for something that is covering a theory that we have already covered in class. You don't have to do that. That's completely okay. For this first one, I would recommend looking at something that's related to a theory that we're covering this week, but it's totally up to you to choose whatever you'd like. If you're really unsure or not quite sure if you selected the right article, you can send it to me, like I said, before Friday, and I'll give you some feedback on it. So make sure that when you do this in your research process, you are finding at least 3 or 4 additional sources that you can use to support your major contentions. What is that? Your major arguments you're going to make about the paper. So either the positive, the negative, whatever it may be. What I'm looking for in this paper is it should be about 3 pages, 3 full pages. You'll find that to get your response out there, it may be a little longer. If you're creeping past 5 and you're getting into the 6, 7 page mark, you've written too much for this type of assignment. So keep that in mind. It's totally okay to have 5 pages. Once you're getting closer to 10, you've probably written too much. So with that, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to review the major concepts and elements of the paper, as well as the theory used in the article. Just going to tell me about it. I probably have not read it. I may have, depending on the type of research that you selected, but there are there's plenty of research out there, so I probably have not read it. Tell the reader about it. Assume we've not read it. Give us a good introduction to what it's about, what it covers, what the studies related to, the theories used, major concepts in it. The next thing you'll do is analyze the strengths and weaknesses of the theory used in the research, as well as the major arguments of the research. So tell the reader what you think is great and what you think is not so great. But you can't just say that without supporting anything. So this is where your 3 to 4 sources that are additional sources will come into play. This is where if you think the theory they used really weakens their study, that you need to support that with an outside source, or you need to support that in some way that shows that this theory isn't really applicable here because whatever. Or if you think it is, that's fine, but you have to use reason and logic and textual support to say what you think. One huge aspect of graduate work is not just stating what we think and what we feel, and I think this paper is great because of whatever it may be, but is providing support for it and having that support. So when we're getting into these scholarly debates about things, or we think that one theory is inadequate because of whatever it is, we have support to show that. We can say, oh, the theorist fell short in these areas and they found this and that. So have some research to support what you're saying. The third thing I want you to do is to comment on how the theory and the study itself, as well as the articles you've read, integrate to what you know about communication and communication theory. And if you don't have a lot to say on that, that's okay. It's fine to admit or to say, you know what, I don't know a lot about communication research and communication theory at this point. But because I don't know that, this is what I've learned, or this is what I want to know, or this is what I think the author should have done in a stronger way to help someone like me understand that. If you do know a lot about communication research and theory, then that's fine. You'll be able to articulate very well on that. So those are the 3 things I'm looking for in your critical reviews. Like I said, they'll be at least 3 pages in length. It'll be full APA format. So what does Dr. Romo mean about that? I mean this specifically. Full APA format, in my opinion, is a cover page, an abstract, the 3 body pages of your paper, your reference page. All of your sources are tightly integrated into the paper with an APA standards. If you aren't unsure of that, you should get an APA manual. If you don't have one, that's okay. You need to Google OWL at Purdue. You also need to go into our Getting Started tab and Blackboard and look at what's in there about APA. I've linked some great videos from the CBU library that will help you with that as well. After that, if you're still confused about APA, then reach out to me. Those are the things that I'm primarily looking for. I want to see a running header, things like that. There are some good templates out there. I wouldn't recommend doing it in an embedded version of Word that never works out properly. Just manually create it yourself. But that's what we're doing this week with the critical review number 1. I probably won't spend as much time on our critical review explanations in the future. I am spending some time on it today because we do this about 4 times in the term. So I want you to clearly understand what my perspectives are on this assignment and what I'm looking for. In the future, I'll just highlight and review what you should be doing. Discussion number 2 really gets the ball going on what we'll be working on this term. Our critical assignment, which is due at the end of the term, is something that is required of all students. It's where we clearly assess and determine where you're at as a student and if you pass the course. You have to pass the critical assignment with a passing grade. So in graduate work, that's 80% in order to pass the class. So keep that in mind. It's definitely a final exam and it's a make or break you type of paper. For this class, you are required to write a research proposal. So you're going to see a lot of our assignments geared towards helping you think about that at this point in the course. We're in week 2. We're using a discussion board this week to start facilitating that discussion. Your post should be about 500 words. I've truncated and shortened and provided a condensed version of what's on Blackboard. For this discussion. This discussion has a lot more to it. I have a lot more information on Blackboard related to each point that you need to do, but I wanted to give you a highlight. So in that, remember, this term we are creating a substantive research proposal for your critical assignment. Throughout the term, we're going to spend a lot of time discussing major points of this assignment to help with the writing and the brainstorming process throughout the term. The goal of our research proposal is to present and justify the need to study a communication research problem, as well as to present the practical ways in which this research should be conducted in your scholarly opinion. The design elements and procedures for conducting the research are governed by the standards within the prominent discipline in which the problem resides. So for us, that is communication. So guidelines regarding research proposals are more extracting and less formal than a general project proposal. Research proposals often contain extensive literature reviews. You will be working on this term. This discussion is gearing us up for that. You must provide persuasive evidence that a need exists in a proposed study, as well as providing a rationale for a proposal and a described methodology and such. So this week you're doing 4 things. You are going to begin the process of discussing research proposals for your critical assignment. By doing that, you're going to select a topic for your research proposal. So you are going to draft a research study. As you read through these critical reviews, these papers, these scholarly journals, you're going to see that this is research that people have actually conducted. In doing that, you will start to see what people study and how it's related to communication. Your research proposal topic must be related to communication. So the first thing you're going to do in this discussion is identify a topic you want to use in your critical assignment. In that, you need to make sure that you provide justification for that topic, as well as relate the topic to communication in some way. What aspect of communication are you studying? The biggest thing we need to know is that communication research should be addressing a communication problem, meaning you found a gap and something we need to explore about how humans communicate that hasn't been conducted in the past. Or if it has been conducted in the past, it needs to be updated because of some reason due to technological advancements or changes in society or whatever that may be. The second thing you're going to do is construct a purpose statement for your topic. You'll see here in the lecture there's not a lot about purpose statements. That is all in Blackboard. But to highlight it, a purpose statement is really just a set of declarative sentences which summarize the specific topic and goals of a document. It really includes the introduction to give the reader an accurate, concrete understanding of what the document will cover and what they will gain from reading it. To be effective, a purpose statement is really just an elongated thesis statement. It's telling you what the purpose of the study is. The third thing you're going to do is share one communication research study. I want you to provide the citation as well as an abstract in your post that you like. it would behoove you, if this study relates to your topic in some way, that you may use it in your literature review. However, that's not required. I want you to discuss how and why this study is effective in your opinion, why you like it, why it may help you in developing your research proposal this term, and then the last thing you'll do is provide one question you want your peers to answer for you. So if you're confused on anything, this is where you're going to get that peer feedback. If you're not sure about your topic, you can say, am I missing the mark? Can somebody give me some feedback, particularly on my topic? Whatever it may be, it's something to facilitate the conversation and to keep it going. So good, this is great. If you have any questions with that, let me know. This week I mentioned we are talking about the communicator. That's the context in which these communication theories come out of. However, I would be doing you a disservice by not highlighting the fact that a lot of these theories are within the socio-psychological tradition. And you'll find that through Craig and Mueller. And so that is the important thing to point out. Littlejohn and Foss are great. They're phenomenal. They're the gold standard when it comes to grad level theory text. However, they don't focus on the tradition as much as some of the other theory texts do. So I want to tie that in when I can, as it's appropriate. So it's important to recognize that the psychological tradition is really conceptualized as a process of social interaction. It focuses on theories that relate to interacting and society. Communication is infused with causal forces of social influence, and that these forces can be understood scientifically is the emphasis really of this tradition. Experimental testing of communication and things often claim about the communication process will occur, and claims about the communication process occur within this tradition. Socio-psychological scholars often look for cause and effects relationships within communication. The way people communicate is predictable. It's also quantifiable. Noted scholars Craig and Mueller say that communication is theorized as an expression, interaction, and influential within this tradition. Specifically, socio-psychological tradition focuses on communication that is reflecting personality, beliefs, bias, judgments, people in groups, and showing how they affect one another. Communication is often theorized in this manner to explain cause and effects of social behavior and cultivates practices that attempt to exert intentional control over those behavioral causes and effects. Remember, communication is loosely defined by many scholars as a process by which individuals share and create meaning with one another. This can happen through rituals shaped by culture and transactions mediated through face-to-face communication in order to maintain, sustain, and manage meaning. From this notion, many scholars have tried to organize communication through various traditions and contexts. Particularly, the socio-psychological tradition focuses on that cause and effect relationship. As we look at this further, we'll see our first theory that I'm going to highlight is social penetration theory. This theory focuses on two types of contexts. You'll see it oftentimes in the communicator and within the relationship. The reason why it has a heavy focus on the relationship is it talks about peeling back layers. This self-disclosure theory was founded in the 60s and 70s. Erwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor proposed that as relationships develop, interpersonal communication moves from relatively shallow to more intimate conversations. For example, I will tell you more as I get to know you is a common phrase known in this theory. Littlejohn says that it's a foundational theory to relationships and disclosure. Self-disclosure is often shared like an onion. We peel back layers as we get to know each other more intimately. And to look at this, we can see that there are a couple layers. There are 4 stages of relationship development that peel back like an onion. Altman and Taylor state that these 4 stages to relationship development begin with orientation. Orientation consists of interpersonal communication in which one discloses only very public information to another. What you would say passing by to maybe not to a colleague, but an acquaintance in the hallway or somebody in the elevator. Hi, how are you? Oh, we're having nice weather today. You're orienting yourself at very public information that you would not care. You're guarded with the private information comes out. The second level is exploratory affective exchange. As you get to know somebody more, the move is Effective exchange is in which movement to a deeper level of disclosure takes place. You start to tell them more. You start to open up to them more. You start to let them know more about your life. The third level is effective exchange. This centers on the evaluative and critical feelings at a deeper level. This stage usually is not entered into unless the partners perceive substantial rewards to relative costs. An earlier stage. This is usually where we're starting to develop intimacy with that person in some way. And in intimacy, we mean you've gotten to know them very well, you've been friends with them for a couple years, they've explored your life in some deep way, they're a significant other, whatever that may be. The fourth one is stable exchange. That is the most and highly intimate level and allows partners to predict each other's actions and responses very well. This is the deepest core. This is at the core, usually reserved for significant others, spouses, sometimes children, sometimes family members, depending on what that relationship is with them and how you view them in that sense. So with that, it's important to keep that in mind. So as we look at this a little deeper, keep some of those things in mind while we are going through that with each other. The next one we're going to look at is elaboration likelihood theory. This is rooted in the communicator. This looks particularly at how likely we are to process information and make critical evaluations about that information. Petty and Capaccio developed this, Richard Petty and John Capaccio. Elaboration likelihood theory is the probability that you will evaluate information critically. It is a persuasion theory because it tries to predict when and how you will and will not be persuaded by messages. It seeks to explain the different way you evaluate information you receive. And particularly, it looks at the different routes you use from a cognitive basis to evaluate information. The central route is the elaborate path to think critically and evaluate information from a purely critical perspective. We're always questioning it. Where the peripheral route does not use elaborate thinking, meaning we're not critically thinking, we often provide tacit approval. We're very passive in our thought process when information passes through that route. We find that this theory shows us that motivation is a huge factor in our ability to use elaboration likelihood. The more likely we are able to elaborate and use a more elaborate route to critical think about information is driven by three types of motivation: our involvement with the communication, the diversity of the argument, and our personal predisposition to it. Involvement is the personal relevance to the topic. How involved, how related, how closely connected are we to this piece? The second one is diversity of argument. This comes into play when we're looking at information from a variety of sources. You are more likely to critically think about it if you've heard the argument from multiple different sources. So you happen to believe a certain way about something, you've heard it on the news, you've heard it from your pastor, you heard it from your friend in 3 different ways. Now you're more likely to be elaborate in your thinking with it. You're more likely to pass it through the central route rather than saying tacitly, oh, I don't care, or whatever my pastor says is good. You're more likely to think about it. There's higher involvement in the processing when you've had a diversified argument about it. The third one is personal predisposition. This means you have a tendency to critically think more often. If someone likes to debate, they typically mull over the information anybody tells them from a critical perspective more often than if a person does not necessarily like to debate or question authority or question thoughts or opinions from anybody. So I wanted to spend some time looking at that. Those are 2 theories that I wanted to highlight for you this week. There are more that we are going through. As you go throughout the course content, it is important to take a look and remember we're reading chapter 3. We're watching 5 videos related to different theories in the course text. We're completing discussion board number 2 by Friday, as well as our replies no later than Sunday, and our critical review number 1 is due on Sunday. I do want to point out that as you go through the Little John and Foss text, you'll see that there are a number of theories we're not going to be able to get to in the course of these 8 weeks. I'm highlighting ones that I feel are the most important for me to talk about in these lectures. However, there are many videos on Blackboards related to ones that I will just not have the time to talk about. due to the length of our course, and there are many in the reading. So do spend some time mulling them over. Email me, set up a time to chat with me. Join in on one of my virtual office hours if you want, so we can chat about it if you need a little more discussion on that in some way, shape, or form. I pray you all have a blessed week. I am enjoying going through your papers from week 1, and we'll have those grades back to you by Friday. God bless and have a great week.